On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, living with mom and dad. So, welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Sean Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and welcome back your financial coach, George Curbelo. How you doing, George?
Happy days. I'm doing good, man. I am, had some traveling that I had to do, so I'm a nervous flyer, so I was, not too happy about that, but survived. I do realize that, the statistics around airlines and the safety, everything is there, and yet I'm still, oh my goodness, the going up and the going down, and I'm like, okay, just, need to calm down, have my liquid courage help me along the way, but I'm back, I'm doing well, and ready to go again.
Nice. Yeah, I've never really been afraid of flying. I don't do it that often, but I'm not really afraid of it. The vibration of the plane and the engine and all that stuff, I typically fall asleep on the flight. I'm that guy that's snoring on the airplane. But the weird thing is, I've never been able to pop my ears.
Oh.
So when the pressure changes from going up and down, I can't hear for like 5 minutes after I get off the flight until I'm walking around and chewing gum, and partially also because I'm sleeping, so I'm not clearing my. But for whatever reason, I can't pop my ears, and so I'll be walking around the terminal of the airport, and suddenly I'll have this big pop, and I'll like startle myself, but then I can hear again.
You're like, oh, who's that? Oh, thanks. Hey, how you doing? Yeah. No, they have technology-wise. Obviously, they do earplugs and all of those kind of things that you can do. I have like your little earbuds, the noise canceling ones. So obviously I'm listening to stories or music or anything like that. That helps because it kind of creates that closure or whatever you want to call it. So never had issues before. Back in the day, yes, it was that. But I always keep my earbuds close. Never have an issue in regards to popping or anything like that, and I can still fall asleep and I'm okay. I probably will miss the cart to get like, would you like a drink? I'm like, no, this guy's passed out, so we're good there.
Well, but enough drinks, you'll just pass out, and it'll be.
That's the idea.
There you go. So, what are we talking about this week?
Well, I got to say, all I'm seeing out in the news and everything that we're out, that's out there on the socials, as the young people. I don't think they say that, but I'll pretend that they do.
The book of faces,
the faces of the booksters, and a lot of people are struggling. And one of the options they have, they want to buy houses. Rent is high. There's so many things that we're doing out there, and folks coming out of college, when they're struggling when it comes to either underpaying jobs or no jobs itself, is living at home. Is that an option? And is it negative? Because everything, it's, obviously my kids are getting older, and I'm like, I love them, but I want them out of the house just because, again, I want them in the real world. I want them to be able to start doing things for themselves and, kind of living as adults. Unfortunately, we all have to become adults one day.
We do. I can't return this adulting card that I got.
You get you got that one with your AARP, right? Is that?
Wow. He just called me old.
Just kidding. Yeah, I'm almost there too. So, but yeah, I think a lot of folks, there's a negative connotation to that whole process. And I'd like to, again, that's what we want to understand is like, is it negative? When is it negative? When can it be a positive experience? Because living with our parents, it automatically thinks of like, kids, right? Fresh out of college or fresh out of high school. It's like, I'm living at home. There's responsibilities that we have, or at least are expected to provide as we start getting a little bit older. But we do have folks who, life happens. And sometimes we got to, we go to family to kind of provide that support and help.
Well, and I did that. When I graduated law school, I moved back in with my parents for, I want to say it was about 6 months while I studied for the bar. I moved back in with them, and I'll never forget, it was the story. So this is back in the late 90s. Sure. I didn't own a cell phone yet. And I remember, because I grew up in Miami, so had buddies of mine from high school, and we went out one night, and had a great time. I was a youth like everybody else, so we went out, we had fun. I think I got back at like 2 or 3 in the morning one morning.
Sure.
And I walk in the house, I go walking around, and I see light coming from my bedroom door.
Sure.
And I thought, that's a little strange. And I go walking into my bedroom, and I see my mom standing in the middle of my bedroom, staring out, because my bedroom was at the front of the house, faced the street.
Mm-hmm.
So she's looking out the window at the driveway. It was a half circle driveway in front of the house. She's looking out the window at the driveway. The light that I saw was the street light outside that was coming in through the window.
Right.
My mom has tears running down her face.
Oh, no.
I said, Mom, what's wrong? She said, well, at least I know you're alive. And she ran into the bedroom and slammed the door and went to sleep. She was nervous because it was 3 o'clock in the morning and I wasn't home. But by this point, I'm in my, late 20s?
Yeah.
Mid-20s, late 20s. And again, before cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no way to call her or anything. It was at that moment, I think that next weekend, I went out and I bought a cell phone. And then I went out and I started looking at apartments.
There you go.
It was
You're like, don't want to worry her.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. As parents, we're going to, that's our babies. You're still the baby. You're still the, if everything's okay. I'd imagine, I still worry my mom, at those times as well. I had similar stories to yours, but she wasn't crying. My mother was more beaten. I was like, she's like, why are you home so late? I was like, okay, sorry. Didn't mean to, this is my house, my rules. I got a lot of that kind of thing itself. So,
and even today, I'm trying to figure it out. Kind of off topic a little bit, but even today, my oldest is 12, my younger is 9, and so they're now at the stage. Can we ride bikes with our friends in the neighborhood? Can we go scootering? My younger son got one of those electric scooters for the holidays, and so can I go electric scootering for I almost busted my rear end on that thing. But
is there a video?
No. Luckily, there's no video evidence of that. But I'm starting to have to figure out, can they cross the major road in the neighborhood, or can they just stay within the neighborhood? Should they stay with friends? I'm a little bit more
play on the street or on the sidewalk, or what are the rules? What are the limitations?
I'm a little bit more comfortable with my older son because he's got his own cell phone now, and we've got the tracking software where I can pull it up and see wherever he is or wherever his cell phone is at any point in the day. So I'm a little bit more comfortable letting my older son do it. Not so comfortable yet with the younger one, but at some point I got to kind of give them their freedom to do that kind of stuff.
That makes sense.
But that's not really what we're talking about today.
No, but it's funny how you're still using the same kind of logic. When they get older, it's going to be the same, what kind of conversations we have. What are the boundaries? What are some of the things that we need to do when it comes to living at home? So you're worried about it, with just riding around the neighborhood and playing in the neighborhood itself, but you're going to be asking the same questions. You're going to be thinking the same way when it comes to, hey, you're going to be living at home. What are the boundaries? What are you going to let them get away with, and what are you not going to let them get away with?
I can't even imagine you've got another driver in the house.
Well, that's what I'm worried. Well, I mean, here's the thing. The car that she uses will be in the garage and it's locked down and the alarm is set. So it's going to be very hard for her to do that on her own. Let's just put it like that. No joy riding in the evening times.
I think back to all the stuff that I did when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to myself, well, I would never,
Yeah.
I won't let my kids do it because I did it. And so I know what to look for to prevent them from doing it. But then I think, wait a minute, I don't think my mom and dad were angels either. So my mom and dad probably have a pretty good idea of what me and my sister used to do. Just like I'll have a pretty good idea of what my kids are doing.
That's it.
And I guess at some point you just got to let them be kids.
You got to let them be kids. You got to let them be young adults. They're going to have to. No one taught you how to do the things that you did when you were growing up and stuff like that. I mean, obviously you have your lessons, the things that your parents, the values and the integrity that your parents instilled in you. But at the end of the day, you still went out. You would do things. You probably were like, I probably need to second think that one again. But that's the thing. As parents, we're trying to be very protective of our kids, and we just don't realize that. Yes, sometimes you got to learn as you go.
So, bringing this kind of full circle, should your kids be paying rent?
Oh, that's going to be the big debate. Well, it depends how old. If let's just put it like this: their job in high school for me is, school. You got to do well. You got to, you have probably practice and sports or any of those kind of extracurricular activities. So for me, that's a focal point. But if we're trying to do financial literacy, right, and we're trying to help them with money, part of that is juggling maybe a part-time job, a side gig, walking dogs, babysitting, any of those kind of things, or working. 15-year-olds, I think 15, 16 at like places like the supermarket, bagging or cashiers and things like that. So having a small gig or job to make money just makes, again, it just teaches them to incorporate in their schedule. So I wouldn't charge them rent though at that point, but there would be, less commission, no little like, oh, here, thanks for doing your chores. You make it, here's a 20 in regards to that. I think that goes away because now they're making money to be able to do, things for themselves.
Well, and I just started my kids. I think this is our second or third month. I just started my kids on allowance.
Okay.
And I was telling you before we turned on the recording, my older son, we're coming back from soccer last night, as a matter of fact. We're coming back from soccer practice. And my older son says, Dad, I need new shin guards for soccer. And I said, why? What's wrong with your old ones? He said, well, nothing. I just want new ones.
They're purple. I want green.
Well, if he had said they're broken,
Yeah.
I might have said, okay, let's go out on the weekend and we'll look and we'll
Sure.
replace them. But he just doesn't like them. He wants, he wants smaller ones, bigger ones, whatever.
Sure.
He wants a different size. And so I said, you've got money in your allowance account. You got money in your Greenlight account. If you want shin guards, you can go buy as many as you have money in your account.
Sure.
He didn't like that answer.
With Dad, you got to provide.
Yeah, he didn't like that answer.
But what was the lesson in that though? There was a difference between a want and a need.
Yeah.
And that's what we're emphasizing. Again, how old is he again? What?
He's 12.
12. So we're trying to instill certain things where it's like, please know the difference between a want and need. You are the provider of the needs in the home itself. If something's broken and you need this, that's great. If something is wanted, that's a different story. And if you have money, hey, you have birthday money, you have anything like that, you're more than welcome to buy yourself a second pair. But it's got to come out of your commission, your money itself. So that's a great lesson.
We were walking back from the soccer field to the car, and we had to go right by the concession stand to get from the soccer field to the car. And so again, he says to me, Dad, I want to buy a snack. So, well, you got your backpack on you. Did you put your wallet in your backpack? He said, no. I said, dude, I'm sorry. I left my wallet in the car, which I did. Now, not because I wanted to avoid buying stuff at concession. I just, we weren't going to be out of the car for more than 5 minutes, and I locked it in the car. So I couldn't get him a snack, and he didn't bring his. Now, it was funny because while my older son was at practice, my younger son and I went to dinner.
Sure.
And we went to Beef O'Brady's, where they have the the claw machines and all that stuff. And my younger son brought his wallet with him, and he spent like $3-4, and he played in the claw machines, and he was happy as a clam.
There you go.
Where does that expression come from?
Happy as a clam. We're gonna have to Google it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I think that's outside of what we're talking about today.
So no rental. So we're not collecting rent from our 12-year-olds and our high schoolers. So that makes sense from there. When do you think is a good time then to start collecting rent from that standpoint? I mean, college still. Well, here's the thing: if you're going to college, I think the education piece and the focus still applies. But once again, I would still think. I mean, did you work while you were in college?
I
Did you have a job?
worked sort of. I worked my junior year of college. I got a job.
Okay.
And I worked junior year, senior year. I didn't work during law school. When I did work during law school, it was working at a law firm. But when I worked, I mean, I was lucky in that my parents could afford to
provide
pay
support,
to
right.
provide.
Sure.
And so really my working was more kind of like I'm treating my kids right now.
Yeah.
My working was I want to go out on Friday night. I need some going out money.
You do right.
I want to go out for pizza with friends,
That's it.
or when I got old enough for beer with friends. I need my own money to do that. That's why I worked.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. I worked in the same way. I worked throughout the whole college. Some of it was to pay for books, and those kind of things. But I agree. I think it was, going out money and stuff like that. That was my main purpose, was like, make a little extra money, you're good to go. But if you're not in college and you're working full time and still living at home, I think that's when the conversation should start about there needs to be some sort of responsibility. Because if we're lucky enough in the real world, right, you make money, you got to live somewhere. You've got to pay rent. You've got utilities. So does it make sense if you're making $20,000 to $40,000, and if you're lucky enough to be rent free? Whoa, that's like, especially in the way the rent market is out there today. That's great, but most parents, if you think about it, most parents are in that situation where they're making ends meet.
Yeah.
So if you have an extra mouth to feed, and no offense, I think I've noticed college kids and older kids, they tend to eat more.
Yeah, they do. Even 12
even
and
12
9-year-olds tend to eat more. So one of the articles that you found is a Yahoo Finance article that I'll link to the show notes here. But it says, according to a new Pew Research Center study, 18% of parents with young adult kids staying with them say their finances are being negatively affected. The Pew study reports that a third of 18 to 34-year-olds are now living at home, largely because of massive student loan debt, as well as the high cost of living.
Yep.
And so Susie Orm says that they should be chipping in for expenses as long as they live at home. The Pew study discovered that 72% of young adults who live with their parents do contribute financially in some way, ranging from contributing to household expenses such as groceries and utilities to even contributing towards the rent or mortgage.
Makes sense. So, I mean, here's the thing. Depending on the situation, if the parents or whoever's, renting or owning the home, it's, they can, if they're doing well, let's put it like that, the amount of money that's collected could be something that it's just more of an exercise of like, hey, you're working, you have school, or you're doing those kind of things, you're contributing to the home in some capacity. Could cover their own expenses, groceries, utilities, internet, phone. I think that's the first expense that would make sense. If phone is the easiest one, it's, for me, as much as we think it's a need from a phone standpoint, it's a want. It's a luxury. It's a want. So that one, I think, is the first of like, hey, pay for your own phone if you want, especially if you want the latest and greatest phone or tablet and you need cell phone service itself. You can get cheaper alternatives, the mobile kind of $50, $25 a month. But of course, if you want the Verizon, not AT&T, because they had recently
I know a good Spectrum guy.
There you go. So
Spectrum Mobile.
Look for opportunities. Okay, so that for me is the first expense that I think could go to them. And it's under $100 at most. My
parents, and we talked about this pre-recording as well. My parents made me pay for gas in the car when I started driving. Now back then, gas, I looked it up. When I started driving, gas was 97 cents a gallon.
Nice. What was the inflation rate?
And then I think inflation rate, if you put that in today's dollars, would be $2.39 or something like that.
Reasonable.
So
Still reasonable.
Even today,
both of those numbers seem reasonable.
Is even more. But that's what if I wanted to go, or if I was driving somewhere and I was the one that made the car go below a quarter tank, I had to fill it up.
Makes sense.
So that they had me doing that.
That's again a simple expense that's under, even in today's prices, under $40 to fill up a tank.
Right.
Unless you're driving big SUV or something like that. That's a reasonable ask. I think once again, it's just contributing somehow into the household for that. I think food, I would say that depends.
Yeah.
Because once again, if you're in my house, you're my kid, I'm not going to charge you to like, okay, here's your meal, it's $25. But I think if there's extra things that are, like, oh, I only do organic. I'm like, well, okay, that will be.
You can buy that.
You can buy that. So that's where, again, I think that, again, for me, it's setting the boundaries around what we think is necessity in the home and what our desires.
Yeah. And even to the extent, it's a good lesson to learn when you get older. I remember back to the days when I was doing a lot of short sales and representing people that needed to do short sales and loan modifications and all that stuff. And I would quote them my fee, and they would say, "Well, I can't afford that." And I'd say, "Well, you can make month. I'll go." Back then, it was as low as $500 a month.
Yeah.
You pay me $500 a month. Once you've paid your total retainer, we're even. You don't owe me any more after that. So just pay me $500 a month, and I'll represent you.
Sure.
And they would always say, "Well, I can't afford $500 a month." And I'd say to them, "Look, you're not paying your mortgage right now.
Right.
I'm asking you to pay me $500 a month, and I'm going to try to keep you in your home as long as I can so that we can get the short sale completed, we can get the loan modification completed, whatever
Right.
it is we
What
can
is
do
it?
to help you.
Sure.
But once I'm done with what I'm going to do, where are you going to live for less than $500 a month?
Right.
I'm not asking you to come up with an extra $500 in your budget.
On top of
You're
it.
probably going to end up paying rent of $1,000 or $1,200 or $1,500 a month. I'm asking you to pay me $500 while you're not paying
Yeah.
that $1,000, $1,250, $1,500 that you're supposed to be paying. So, I mean, even to start, what occurred to me was to start teaching these lessons to my boys early
Yeah.
or earlier, so that if they ever find themselves in a scenario where something goes sideways and they're in financial trouble, how can they deal with it?
Sure. No,
So-
that makes sense. I'll give you. I'll give you a tip after the scenario I'm going to talk about. What if the parents are struggling? Because a lot of parents today are struggling because they have to take care of their parents.
Right.
Again, we're in that
The
situation where
sandwich generation.
the sandwich generation. So they're helping that out. If the kids now are, and this is where again they feel like they're a burden, right? Parents are feeling like, oh my God, my 27-year-old is a burden on me because they're struggling and they're probably managing that the sandwich generation. For me, then it becomes how can they help to stabilize the situation? The kids, meaning what can they do to help stabilize what mom and dad or what they're doing so that they're not feeling the pinch at that point.
Well, and I think that's a difficult question for me because
Yeah.
on the one hand, I think it depends on the age of the child.
Of course.
I'm not going to tell my 12-year-old, I'm having
No.
trouble paying the mortgage, you got to give me some money.
Correct.
But if he graduates college and then graduates from some whatever, either gets a job or graduates from a degree program, gets a job, whatever, and decides to move back in and he's, mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s,
Correct.
yeah, you want to live here with me and I'm struggling financially, you're going to have to kick in some money.
There's got to be something there I agree. I think now here's the thing. What's a reasonable amount is going to be the question that always comes up. But, let's assume $400 is what the parent needs to be able to just keep things going. Everything is stable. That parent can pay some debts. Everything is paid up to date. $400 it sounds like a lot, but when
It sounds like a lot, but it's not. I mean,
compared, right.
the thing that I was thinking is if I had to approach my son, let's say he's now in his mid to late 20s, 30s, early
Sure.
30s. If I had to approach him and say, dude, I need $5,000 a month for you to live here, I got bigger issues.
You got bigger issues.
I should
correct.
probably be looking at, do I need to file bankruptcy?
Right.
Am I living in too expensive of a house?
Correct.
But to say, hey, look, you're living here, you're using we're using utilities, we're eating
Yep.
food, we're both paying for cars, we're doing this, we're doing that. I don't think $400 or $500 is that much to ask them to chip in.
I agree, and that could include utilities. It could include food. It could, and that part of it is the conversation. Like what is the the amount going to get you? And I think that, but I think you're right. I mean, where would you find rent that's $400? Even if you do roommates today, in the way it is. I mean, unless you have 20 people living in it.
Yeah, that's the problem. If you do roommates, and let's say that there's 4 of you, and $400 each is $1,600 a month. I don't know any place you're going to rent that
No.
has 4 bedrooms for $1,600 a month.
Exactly.
It's probably going to be closer to $3,000 or $4,000 a month.
Correct.
And so you're probably looking at rent payments, even if you split it, somewhere in the $750 to $1,000 range.
Correct.
So,
and at least you have the same room you've been in, you're hanging out, whatever like that. But and what we wanted to is it's temporary. So if it's an opportunity to be able to help your parents out, even on the short term,
right.
There's a way to provide that, and you're helping, and at the same time There's boundaries that can be set in regards to like what the money is used for, or any of those kind of things as well. But I don't know. It's one of those situations where it's tough because you just like, well, those are my kids. I don't want to charge them.
No.
And I want them to, enjoy life, do all those kind of things, but it's a fine line. Here's another thing though. Let's assume you're in a good spot and you're
Right.
still wanting to collect that rent, and you want to provide, a lot of parents can just collect it and the rent itself is not used. You can set it aside into a savings, into a CD or something like that. And at the end of their term or, the lease, or they're about to leave, that money that you've been collecting each month, it can be their gift towards whatever they're doing next.
That's probably what I would do if I ever encountered a situation where one or both of the boys had to move back in with me after they were at a working after they enter the workforce, and I didn't need any contribution from them. That's probably what I would do. Is I would take it and I'd put it into savings, and then when they do decide, maybe save it, help them save it up so that when they do buy that house, here's your down payment, and it's the money you've been giving me, or invested in the stock market,
Correct.
or invested in whatever. That's probably what I would do with it.
And that makes little things to be able to help them without even them real. You don't even have to tell them. It's like, I'm just collecting the rent, and then here's the check that of all the money that you've provided over the year or the month or whatever it might be. Just different ways to once again contribute. They're helping you. You're helping them. It's for me. I look at it as a win-win for all of us there.
So now let's flip the script, because there's another article on Yahoo Finance. What would you do if your mom called and said, "I need to move in"?
Oof.
Then what do you do?
Oh, I mean, you can't say no. For me, I'm always where if my mom needed the help and she, if for any of that reason, I guess the question was why?
Right.
What happened that you're in this situation where you're coming to me and needing a place to stay? Whatever the reason, you're going to help, but I'm not going to enable. So it's going to come back to why, what happened. If there was any like drugs or gambling or any of those kind of addictions that could put you in that situation, how do we seek professional help? I will help you, but there will be boundaries. There will be guidelines to the help that's provided. You're just not going to automatically come in, live here for the next 10, 15, 20 years, and still have the same problems or the issues that you have. But I don't think I would, with boundary,
Right.
You at least be like, "What? Yeah, mom. What can I help?"
It's the same conversation. It's you got to set boundaries for the kids. You got to set boundaries for mom and dad, or mom, or I know you were raised by single mom, but whoever it is. So that's the other article that's here on Yahoo Finance is over 1 in 5 Americans. I don't know what over 1 in 5 Americans means, but over 1 in 5 Americans.
Slightly over.
Yeah.
Is it
Is
2?
it 1.1, 1.2? How do you get 0.2 of an
22% is what they're. I think
How do you
is
get 0.2 of an American? Over 1 in 5 Americans are counting on friends and family to support them financially when they retire.
friends and family though.
Friends and family.
That's that for family. I understand. We kind of already touched upon the whole sandwich generation. Totally understand that. I don't know. I don't know if I could go to friends and be like, hey, I'm having some tough time here, and just like, can you loan a guy a few $100s? I just couldn't. That's just not me. My mom is like, you got to go work, go figure it out, go find it. But I it's one of those kind of things. How could people say that? Like, I'm going to rely on my neighbors, or my churchgoers, or people, my parishioner. I just can't do it.
Although it is interesting, having just kind of gone through something, when we got all the support that we got from the community, I almost felt like I had to turn some of it down. People would,
right.
I still have a couple $100 in gift cards at my house from people that just wanted to be nice and do something for me and the boys. But it wasn't, I think the difference there is it wasn't something we relied on.
Right.
I'm not like, oh, cool, I got gift cards, so now I don't have to,
do that.
It was something that, okay, people made a nice gesture. I appreciated it, but it wasn't like we were asking.
Yeah, it was expected.
It wasn't like we were expecting it. But
now here's the thing: how would you feel about like giving back and be like, you have all of this abundance? Is it wrong for you to be able to go and see if you can help someone else who's maybe in the same situation you're in, or or any of those kind of maybe financial situations where it's like here's a gift card that can go help you, at this moment.
Well, and that's one of the cool things about the Greenlight app that I found for my kids for allowance.
Yeah.
It automatically breaks up their weekly allowance into 3 pieces. One piece goes into an account that they can use for whatever they want. 70% of the week they get paid every other week. So 70% goes into an account that they can spend on whatever they want.
Yep.
Been giving back I've been announcing it now for the last 2-3 weeks at the end of every episode, the pancreatic cancer walk that we're doing at the end of April. So I've been raising, I think as a team we're at about $5,000 raised, and
Nice.
I think individually I'm close to
Nice.
$3,000 raised. So that's how we're and I put some of
Giving
my
back.
own money in there as well, and I'm helping to raise. I showed you today we got the logos for the shirts
Right.
that we got to decide between. So I'll be selling shirts to raise money for that as well. So that's how I've decided to give back.
I'll get one as well. I didn't like some of the designs, but
Some of them, some
But-
of them are really cool.
yeah, some of them are very good, and I'll definitely wherever I
Maybe-
can help. That's good.
Maybe that's what we'll do on the after pod is we'll show the logos, and whoever wants to watch in the after pod on Patreon,
There you go.
and they can vote on which ones they like best.
Love it.
By the way, just wanted to let you know, what's the origin of the phrase "as happy as a clam"?
Of course. What is it?
Why would clams be happy? It's been suggested that open clams give the appearance of smiling. The derivation is more likely to come from the fuller version of the phrase, now rarely heard, "as happy as a clam at high water." High tide is when clams are free from the attentions of predators. Surely the happiest times in a bivalve mollusk world.
Okay. Well,
Phrase originated in the northeastern states of the USA in the early 19th century. The earliest citation is from a frontier memoir, The Harp's Head, A Legend of Kentucky. It never occurred to him to be discontented. He was happy as a clam. There's your answer.
there is the answer. I appreciate it. You learned 2 things today, people, and I think that's
Well, I had the top money factor from last week. So.
That's a good one. I would say if you haven't, the one thing I learned from last week's episode is money factor with leasing a car. So
And buying,
if you
yep.
haven't heard it, go back and hear that and comment on what you learned.
There you go. So what do you think? What do you guys think in terms of either paying to help your kids, having your kids help to pay you, supporting mom and dad? What do you think of all that? Let us know. Also, reach out to our sponsor, Sam Cohen. He owns Attorneys First Insurance. We've been talking about him for a long, long time. Great friend of the show, great supporter of the show, great friend personally. He writes errors and omissions insurance for attorneys and title companies all over the country. You can contact him, sam@attorneysfirst.com. We mentioned the Patreon page, patreon.com/crushingdebt. We'll do a Zoom video and show all the logos here in a minute if you want to hop on there and help us out. And then the Purple Stride Pancreatic Cancer Walk, which is April 27 this year. We're recording in 2024. You can join our team, My Legacy Striders. I'll post again. I'll post the links there. Just go to the
Donate. Help where you can.
pancan.org, and you can search for My Legacy Striders. Other than that, I think we are done for the week.
I am saying yes. I think we're done. I'm gonna go charge my kids rent, and if they want that pizza, it's gonna be a service fee that's tied to it.
I'm going to go print up an invoice and serve it on both my kids. So we do hope that you have more money at the end of the month rather than more month at the end of the money, and we will talk to you in next week's episode.